Hi, welcome to another episode and lesson for early career educators. So, today we're going to be talking about conflict resolution, and I'll be providing you with a toolkit for your classroom. So, conflict resolution is the process of addressing and resolving disagreements and disputes between individuals or groups in a constructive, respectful, and effective manner. In educational settings, conflict resolution involves teaching your students strategies to manage their interpersonal conflicts, communicate their needs, so some regulation here, listen actively, and collaboratively find solutions that are fair and acceptable to all parties involved. The goal is not only to resolve the immediate issue, but also to foster a positive classroom climate. We also want to build social emotional skills and prevent future conflicts. Some of the key elements of conflict resolution include identifying the source of the conflict, encouraging open and respectful communication, facilitating understanding and different perspectives, guiding students towards this mutually agreeable solution, and promoting accountability and reflection. So, how do you use this in the classroom? How do you utilize conflict resolution? Well, effective conflict resolution in the classroom should be proactive, it should be inclusive, and developmentally appropriate. Here's how you might implement the process. First, you will establish clear expectations and procedures. Begin the year by teaching and modeling classroom rules, routines, and actually, I don't even like to say the word rules, procedures, norms. Utilize your routines and expectations for respectful interactions. Integrate conflict resolution procedures into your classroom management plan so that your students know what to do when disagreements arise. The second thing is to teach conflict resolution skills. Explicitly teach age appropriate strategies for resolving conflicts using I statements, by active listening, and brainstorming solutions. You could also use role playing, case studies, and real life scenarios to practice these skills. Third, you would facilitate structured discussions. When any conflicts occur, guide students through a structured process. Allow each party time to share their perspective without interruption. Help students identify their feelings and their needs. Encourage empathy by having students restate what they heard. Lead the group by generating possible solutions and agreeing on a plan. Next, we move into modeling and reinforcing positive behaviors. So, consistently model respectful communication and problem solving. Reinforce desired behaviors by acknowledging when students use conflict resolution. Praise them for that, especially when they're using the strategies effectively. The fifth tool or the fifth objective is to create a safe and supportive environment. Ensure that all of your students feel heard and valued during a conflict resolution. Address any underlying issues such as bullying, exclusion, or any cultural misunderstandings. Lastly, reflect and follow up. After a conflict is resolved, debrief with your students to reflect on what worked and what could be improved upon. Monitor the situation to ensure the resolution is effective and relationships are restored. Why does this all matter? Implementing this conflict resolution in your classroom early not only addresses immediate disputes, but also teaches lifelong social emotional skills, self-regulation. It reduces disruptions. It creates more inclusive and equitable and productive learning environment. And this approach also aligns with most school districts as well. It emphasizes on fairness, respect for diversity, and the development of caring and competent and committed classmates and also educators. Next, let's move into what conflict resolution looks like for the varying age levels. So for kindergarten, you would use explicitly teach the steps. Use simple language and visuals to walk students through the conflict resolution process. You would model and role play by demonstrating scenarios and let students practice with each other with teacher guidance, of course. Create a peace table or a calm corner. I feel like every classroom needs a calming center. And this is a designated space where students can go to resolve conflicts with support tools like emotion cards and scripts. So some sample activities for kinder would be role playing, as I mentioned, acting out common scenarios, sharing of toys, waiting turns, following the line leaders. After role playing, discuss your feelings and brainstorm on any solutions as a class. Also include choice boards. This displays options for resolving conflicts. For example, like talk it out, take turns, asking for help. So when a conflict arises, students can choose a solution from the board. Emotion cards. These cards utilize faces showing different emotions to help students identify and express their feelings before discussing the problems. One caveat is to consider any legislative changes that in Texas might be needed to be addressed. I know there was discussions about using emotion cards, so be sure that in your state, anything that you use does not go against what is allowed by law. Also, the peace table I mentioned earlier, here's where students sit across from each other at a table and use a simple script. I feel blank when blank, and then walk through the problem with the teacher's support. So now let's look at elementary grades 1 through 3. Here, you will also teach the I statements. When you blank, I feel blank because of blank, and then I would like blank. Conflict resolution steps help students to calm down, explain why they're upset, discuss and resolve their feelings, acknowledge, and then maybe even get a handshake or a hug out of it. You could also have classroom meetings, much like family meetings. Hold regular meetings to practice and reinforce conflict resolution skills. Here are some sample activities. The conflict scenario cards, present these to students, and these cards will describe common conflicts. And in pairs or groups, students role play, resolving these conflicts using the steps that are taught. You could take the peace path, and this is a visual path on the floor with steps for resolving conflict. So, for example, students would stop and breathe. The next step is share feelings. The next step is to listen. And the next step is to find a solution. You can even utilize an honest expressions sheet. Students will fill out the sheet with sentence starters to express their feelings and even their needs. Then they share with the other person. This is also another way to learn and improve on self-regulation. A last activity could be stop, think, talk, and solve. This teaches students Once you display the process, to stop, think about the situation, talk it out, and to come up with the solution. You can practice with real or hypothetical situations. Now let's move on to middle school. Here you could teach the solve method. S is for stop. O is open up a discussion. L is listen. V is to volunteer solutions. E is evaluate and implement those solutions. You could also teach active listening, and this is where you practice paraphrasing and reflecting back on what the other person says. Sentence starters could be, I heard you say, or I hear you saying X, Y, or Z. Next, you could also practice something called emphasize empathy. This is to discuss how to see situations from another person's perspective. It's an easy way to emphasize empathy. Here are some activities. You could discuss conflict styles, explore different conflict styles: avoidant, accommodation, compromise, collaboration, competition. And then you can talk about when each of these conflict styles might be appropriate. Again, you can practice with role-playing scenarios. Use real-life scenarios, group projects, disagreements, social exclusion, and have students practice resolving them. Calming techniques. Teach and practice strategies for cooling off before addressing the conflict. Deep breathing, taking a walk. You might even want to have a little calm down corner or calming area. And lastly, you could have activities that revolve around reflection journals. After a conflict, students write about what happened. They write about how they felt, and they write about how they resolved it or could resolve it better next time, more importantly. All right, now let's look at high school conflict resolution. Some procedures could be to facilitate peer mediation, train students to mediate conflicts among their peers. You could have restorative circles. This is structured group discussions to address and resolve conflicts. You could also talk about problem solving and emphasize negotiation. So encourage students to brainstorm and evaluate solutions together. Some activities that you might use in high school are the anger ball toss. In a circle, students complete the sentence, I feel angry when, and then toss a ball to a peer who restates and adds their own. This also builds empathy and it increases communication. You could conduct feelings check-in activities. Students write down and share how they're feeling before discussing a conflict. And of course, there's debate and reflection. Use structured debates on controversial topics, followed by reflection on how disagreements are handled. Then you could also do some peer mediation training. Teach students the steps of mediation and let them practice in controlled environments. Later, check the YouTube page for a conflict resolution toolkit by grade level, which will include for kinder some visual aids, a conflict resolution poster, scripts, sample role play activities, printable emotion cards, peace table procedures, and for elementary, the toolkit will include some visual aids on peace path, floor decals, and a poster, I statements, scenario cards, an honest expression sheet, classroom meeting procedures will be also included. Now, for middle school, we'll have a visual aid explaining the solve method. We'll also have scripts for peer mediation and a sample activity for conflict style discussions, and also a printable template for reflection journal pages. Now, for high school, your toolkit will have visual aids for what restorative circles look like, a guideline visual aid, a script for peer mediation or restorative circles, and a sample activity for the anger ball toss. There'll also be some printable templates for feelings check-ins. Today I feel because of, one thing I need is, for peer mediation, we'll have a training outline, and this will detail the steps like introductions, sharing perspectives, identifying needs, brainstorming solutions and agreement, and then practicing with real or hypothetical situations. So here are some tips for all age levels. We do need to normalize conflict. It's okay, conflict will happen. We need to teach students that conflict is a normal part of any relationship and it's an opportunity for growth. We need to model and reinforce, consistently modeling respectful communication and reinforce positive conflict resolution behaviors. And we should practice regularly. Integrate conflict resolution practice into a daily routine, not just when an issue arises. So, some general resources that you might include or need for all age levels are printable posters, scenario cards, reflection sheets, emotion cards. And how to use these resources: print and display the visuals in your classroom so that students can see them all the time, not just when there's a conflict. Use these scripts and templates during class meetings, role plays, and real conflicts. Regularly practice with scenario cards and reflection sheets. Adapt your language and complexity to fit the student's developmental level. All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming, and I will see you in the next class.